Talking about user testing or usability testing.
Hello everybody, I'm going to do something funny. I decided I was going to go high-tech for my notes, so I put them on my phone in Evernote, which I don't usually do, but now I realize I have to hold a phone, a clicker, and a microphone. So this will be great. Is that geeky or what? All right, I'm going to talk about usability. So I've been doing usability testing and analysis for about 10 years. So starting in 2004, I did something funny. I worked for a startup. We built software that helps people make websites back before the word content management system existed. And so we do training for our customers. We go to their office and teach them how to use it. And I would sit in the back and watch them use our software while someone in the front taught them how to use it. And I would scribble as fast as I could, taking notes because they would be making lots of mistakes. You know, even though there was someone teaching them up at the front, click here, they would not click there. So we decided we're going to make it easier to use. So I took notes and then we went back and fixed it. Turns out there's actually science to this. I didn't start out knowing that there was a science. I didn't even know there was a word for this. But I found out later that it's called usability testing. So my talk today is to help you get over your fear of running your first usability test. So my talk is, it's tough to mess up a usability test, but if you really want to, here's how. And I'm going to give you 7 ways. First, who here has done a usability test as a coordinator or a watcher? Okay, we got a few people. Who here has been a participant? You've been the person that they watched use software in a usability test. All right, we've got a few people who've done that. Why aren't the rest of you doing usability testing? That's the question. You can tell me later. All right, so the question is, what do we mean by a usability test? It is learning how easy or hard it is to use our software while watching people actually use them. And how do we do that? Well, we find someone like one of our target users. That's important. We show them our product, we watch them use it, we learn from their mistakes, we make the product better, and then we do it again. Kristen Runyon talked about iterating using Agile. You know, you don't have to be perfect the first time. You keep trying. Usability testing should work like that. Don't wait till the end to do your test. Just get out there, show them your product, watch them fail, then make it better. And here's the beautiful thing. Doing a usability test can take as little as 30 minutes. It can cost as little as $0. It produces results immediately. It can make your product better. So why wouldn't you do it? Is it that easy? Yes, it is that easy. So here's a little science behind usability testing. When you sit down next to a person and you watch them use your product, you're going to empathize with their pain. You're going to see them struggle as they use your product, and you're going to feel bad for them. As a matter of fact, you're going to have this overwhelming urge to help them as they use your product. Don't do that, right? Watch them and then go make it better so you don't have to help them. This empathy is a key important part of usability testing. For that reason, you want to get as many people on your team out doing usability visits as possible. You know, so not all at once. Don't get like 10 people loaded into a room watching over their shoulder. You know, every time you do a usability test, have 1 or 2 or 3 people go with you and watch them and empathize with the users, and then go back and be your advocates. Oh, guys, they're struggling with this. We got to make it easier. You know, that's what you want to do. It sounds hard. You might make mistakes. But here's the question, how do you become an expert at something? Who here is an expert at something? Yeah, how do you become an expert? You try, you fail, and then you try again, right? I'll tell you a little fact about myself. I took this personality test one time years ago, and it said that I have 0 fear of failure. And not only do I have 0 fear of failure, but I didn't even know it was possible to be afraid of failure. So I'm that guy who's always doing stupid things, and saying, whoa, it didn't work, I'll try something else, and I do something stupid. Some of you guys have a fear of failure, and I understand. But I'm going to tell you that there's so low risk in doing usability tests that you should not be afraid. Now, that's not true for all fields. If you work in a job where the use of your product is life or death, or dismemberment or something like that, hopefully you're already doing some kind of rigorous testing. So for example, I work for John Deere, and we've got tractors that drive themselves through fields. It's pretty amazing. Well, yes, we do very, very rigorous testing to make sure that, you know, bad things are very, very unlikely to happen. All right. So to get the best results, here's 7 things that you can try not to do, and I think you'll be in good shape. Now, if you do these things, nothing bad will happen. You just won't get the best benefit from your test. So just, try not to do them. All right. Choose testers, unlike your real users. Let's see. Brad, tell me, who's your target user for hatchlings?
Women over 35.
Women over 35. Okay, Brad has a game that has been extremely successful. That is a Facebook game, and he targets women over 35. So Brad, would you get your little brother to be one of your usability tests?
If I had a little brother, no.
Would not be his target user. So he would not want his little brother to do it. How about your mom? Would she be good? Yeah, she'd be in your demographics, right? I'll tell you later, don't use your mom. Let's see here. Let's say that you target iPad users. All right, so your buddy is a huge Android fan, like my buddy right here in front of me is a huge Android fan. I would not use him as one of my target users, as one of my testers, because he's not a target user. Or, here, I'll tell you a big mistake I made one time. I was testing a feature for John Deere that was specifically targeted at farmers who had thousands and thousands of acres, great big huge farms. And I needed to test something. I was in a rush, and I had a couple people who were small farmers, and I had them test it. And they failed miserably. They didn't get it. I'm like, oh, it's horrible. Our software's hard to use. What are we going to do about it? And my boss said, go talk to target users first. Don't panic. Go see what your target users do. So I did. I went to Mississippi. So when I do field work, I actually go out to a field, where there's cows and corn and stuff like that. Tested with some large farmers, and they all loved it. So you want to use people that are like your real users. Another thing you don't want to do is ask your users leading questions. These essentially put words in their mouths. Funny thing about leading questions is, people like to say yes. So if you ask them a yes or no question, they like to say yes. They'll do that more often than they'll say no. So you want to make sure you word your stuff very carefully, ideally so they can't give you a yes or no answer, or if you must ask a question that's a yes or no answer, don't put it so that they're going to pick the one that you want them to pick. All right? Here's some questions you wouldn't want to ask. How easy was it? How easy was it for you to complete this task? All right. Well, what you're doing is saying, hey, this was pretty easy, right? And so maybe it wasn't easy, but because they want to be your friend, they don't want to say mean things to you, they're going to say, oh, it was pretty easy, Well, you don't know. Was it easy? Was it hard? You asked them a leading question, so don't do that. How about this? Did you find this difficult? Now, what did I just say? Don't ask them questions that are yes or no answers, because they're going to say, oh, yeah, it was. It was difficult. They'll think of something difficult about it, right? Or, would you tell your friends to use this app? Okay, there's an important way to ask that question called the Net Promoter Score, but don't ask it like that, because, they're going to say, oh, yeah, I'd tell my friends, I guess. Sure. Well, you don't know. They might not. It was a leading question. All right, another thing not to do. Don't train your users or give them help. Now, have you ever been in a user test where you watched someone trying to use your software and they were just stuck? And the solution was so obvious, right? It's like, don't you see that big yellow button right there? And you just desperately wanted to say, click, 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 click that yellow button. You see it, You wanted to help them, right? It's so frustrating. Don't do that. Don't help them, okay? Just, when they ask you questions, don't answer them. And I usually tell them at the beginning, I say to them, you guys, you might have some questions. I'm not going to answer them during the test. After we're done, I'll answer any questions you have. But during the test, I'm not going to answer them. And so they say things like this. What will happen if I click this button? Okay, I might be tempted to say, well, I don't know, what will happen? But then what you're doing is you're encouraging them to do something they might not actually do. So when they say, what's going to happen when I click this button? Just go, smile and nod. Maybe don't nod. Just look at them, and then they're going to remember, oh yeah, you're not going to answer my questions, are you? When they have to decide, do they want to click the button or not? The computer might explode. I don't think I'm going to click it, and that's a failure. Let's see here. How about this? They always ask, it isn't possible to do this, right? Well, it's possible. Just shrug. Don't know. Can't help you. Someone's calling me. That's another problem with using your phone for notes. All right, let's talk about something else you don't want to do. Don't stress out your users. Let's see, I used to work for a company that made a software called Ubuntu. And way back like in 2006, the Ubuntu login screen had a timer on it. So that you had to push a button to get to the login screen, and then you had to successfully enter your username or password within 15 seconds or with the screensaver. And there was a progress bar that would, and a timer that would count down 15 seconds. Well, there was so much stress in this that people would just panic. And we did a user test with people that weren't geeks, and they're like, I'm afraid to type my password because what's going to happen in 15 seconds? And so this was it's one of those things you just want to do. Don't stress out your users. What's a good way to stress out your user? Watch over their shoulder like a hawk. That's very stressful. So hopefully you can use some technology or, I don't know, just be creative on how you can get a little bit further back from them and not look over their shoulder too much. But hey, this does not mean you have to go spend thousands of dollars on a fancy lab, okay? Just be creative. So I've got an iPad app here called iDisplay, and it runs on your computer and your iPad, and it turns your iPad into a second screen. And that way you can have your iPad a little ways away from them and see what they're doing. That's a good way to do it, and that app costs like $5. So there's a good way to do it if you already have an iPad. Let's see here, furiously taking notes, all right? So they're happily clicking along, and all of a sudden you're like, oh no, scribble, 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 scribble. And they think, uh-oh, I just messed up really big because they're furiously taking notes. So don't do that. If possible, use screen recording software so that you can take the notes afterwards. And I always tell my users, think out loud. While you're taking the test, I know this is a little unnatural, but just tell me what you're thinking because I'm recording this and I want to know later on, why you did that. And that way you can avoid taking notes. Or if you just like taking notes, don't stop taking notes. Okay, just pretend like you're writing the whole time and don't let them see your notepad. And don't lean over to your buddy. Oh, did you see what they just did? Don't scare them. All right. Okay, don't watch like a hawk, don't fiercely take notes, don't time them, don't give them screwy technology. Now, normally the technology that we're using tonight here works perfectly, but there's this problem where the more people that are watching, the more likely you're going to have a problem. Well, avoid screwy technology, unless that's what you're testing, okay? Go ahead, show them your technology, if it's screwy, but try to avoid things that you're not familiar with. So for example, I do mobile development, kind of, and I do mobile testing. And so usually when I do user testing, I have to show my users a Macintosh computer, and they don't understand the two-finger scrolling, or if I have a mouse, they don't understand the inverted scrolling. So I try to make my computer as non-screwy as possible for them. Usually, sometimes it's still a little screwy. Oh well. All right, let's talk about something else not to do. Oh wait, first, important. Okay, these aren't on my slides, but okay. Avoid anything that's distracting, all right? Perfume is distracting, all right? Don't do that. Don't chew gum. Don't tap your pencil. Don't wear perfume or cologne. Dress modestly. Eat a mint, please. Eat a mint. Yeah. All right. Next slide. Do not reward success or failure. Now this is an image from Ghostbusters, which you cannot see in the back, but this is the scene at the beginning when they're doing the psychic experiment, and he holds up the cards and tries to get them to guess what it is, and if the guy doesn't guess, he gives them an electric shock. You remember that? Don't penalize your users like that. It makes them mad, and it frustrates them, and it makes them behave in ways that normal users don't. Likewise, we want to be careful about rewarding users. I would never do this. I would never say, hey, try my product out. If you succeed, I'll give you money. This adds stress to users because they really want the money, and they're going to try really hard to get it, and then they're going to start behaving differently. I have a microphone, I don't have to talk as loud, so I don't have to wear my voice out. Can you hear me okay in the back? Thank you. Now, there is one exception to this rule about rewarding users or penalizing them. And that's if you're testing someone in a situation where that reward or penalty is a realistic outcome. So for example, I met this guy who makes sound effects for fighter planes. And so he had to make a sound effect for somebody has missile lock on you. All right? Now it turns out that when somebody has missile lock, you either have to A, do something really quick to evade it, or B, blow up. And so he had to make a sound effect that accurately conveyed you're about to die without causing them to panic. Turns out there's a science to this. I'm glad I don't have that job as a fighter pilot or the guy that has to make that sound effect. I just make web software. All right, now this one's tough. This one's tough because if you're doing user testing and you go out and do your first test, you're gonna be like, OMG, you would not believe what I just learned on my first test. People are gonna panic because they're having this big problem. You know what, every test has an outlier. And so you can't do just one because you never know if that one is the outlier. So don't overemphasize the results of one test. As a matter of fact, I tend to not share my results at all on a single, until I've had more than one test. So sometimes managers are like, how'd it go, how'd it go? I'll tell you in a couple days when I've got a couple more tests done. Although I will make notes about my outliers. So my general rule of thumb is you always want to do 5 user tests. Now I picked this number out of my own experience, but it turns out a lot of smart scientists agree that 5 is the right number for reasons that I didn't even think of. So if you go to the website, measuringusability.com, and search for the phrase 5 users, you'll see some really amazing math on why 5 is good. Here's my simple reason. If you do 4 or 6 users, then sometimes you get this problem where half of them did something one way and the other half did it the other way. And I always hate having to decide which way is the right way. So I do an odd number, just so that you can't have a 50-50 split, right? That's a simple reason. In reality, the reason why, another good reason to do 5 is you're 80% likely to find all the major problems if you do 5 users. And sometimes you will have a user that only one person has this problem. And then you have to decide, am I going to dig into that one problem a little deeper to find out if they were an outlier or if that's a legitimate problem. But 5 users will give you 80% probability that you're going to find all the big problems. And if you do a test, a round of tests, 5 tests, make the product better, and then you do another 5 tests, guess what? If you knock off all the big problems from the first test, then you're going to find the next 80% of the big problems. And then you're going to knock those out. They're not going to be as bad as the first step probably. And then you fix those, and then you do another test, and you knock out the next 80% of the big problems. And pretty soon, all you got left is little problems, which is good. All right, here's a big problem. Be careful, don't do this. Don't believe what your users tell you, because they lie, and they don't know it, because they don't really know what they want. You can't trust them. Actions speak louder than words. So watch what they do. Don't listen to what they say. Now that's not true. Listen, write it down, pay attention to it, because if 4 out of your 5 people all say the same thing, they might be right. They might not be right, but it's good to know. I'm selling my house now. My realtor said, if one person says something, ignore it. But if 3 of us say something, then we probably need to investigate that and fix it. And the same is true with you guys. Just don't listen to what they say too carefully. Sometimes they'll say, oh, your brand colors are green. You should make the background of the page green, right? Because green's a great color for John Deere. No, we're not going to make the page green. I'm sorry. Thank you for your advice, though. All right, let's get interactive. Let's have a quiz. Which of these would you never do? Have your users test a product that we know is broken. And I'll tell you, you can pick 2 or 3 or 4 if you want. Okay? So would you never have your users test a product that you know is broken? Would you never offer your testers a reward if they can complete a task? Would you never test with a mock-up instead of a real product? Or would you never give a thank you gift for their time? All right, who thinks number 1 is something you probably wouldn't do? Number 1, A. Sorry, on my phone it's A. Who here thinks A is something they probably wouldn't do? I saw some hands up, that's fine. Okay, yep. But you know what? I think A is okay. As a matter of fact, I do this all the time. I say, this is a product that's got some problems, there's some things that aren't working. I just want to see, you know, as I ask you some questions, what you think should happen. And sometimes you'll get an error message, and that's fine. I just want to know. Like, this is really good for navigation and things of that nature. You know, hey, where would you expect to find this feature? Well, they say, I think there should be a menu like this. Okay, I'll write it down. Again, remember, they might be lying, they might not know it, but I still write it down. All right, who thinks B, offering a reward to complete a task is something you wouldn't do? Yeah, that was an easy one, right? Because I told you not to do that. And that puts someone in distress. How about C, test with a mock-up instead of a real product? Who would not do that? You wouldn't do that. I would do that. You know, back in the day, I used to test with paper. I would print out the website, and I would put it in front of people, and I'd say, tap with your finger and click. Now, this is before iPads, right? And say the word click when you click somewhere. And then they would click, and I would switch the page out to the next page on the website. This is called paper prototype testing. Nowadays, and then we moved to Flash, and so we would just take screenshots from Photoshop into Flash and make the buttons hot spots so you could go to different slides. I've seen people do that in PowerPoint too. That's fine, do it. You know, when is it cheapest to fix a problem? At the design stage or at the end of the development stage? Design, isn't it? Way easier. So test on a prototype. How about this one? Would you give a thank you gift to your users? Yeah, I would do that. Go for it. Sometimes giving a gift makes it easier to find more testers. Just say, hey, I need 5 people to test. I'll give you a $25 mall gift card so you can go get yourself lunch. You know, there's no problem with that. But you know what? You might not have to. You might have no problem getting users. My customers love to tell me, they want to give me feedback. So I don't always have to do that, but sometimes I do. All right, another quiz. This is a short one. This is the last one I need. And this is controversial. We're going to have some fights, so roll up your sleeves. Which of these things do you think is most important? A user's first experience with an application. B, a user's last experience with an application. C, the user's success rate in completing a task. Or D, the conversion rate or customer satisfaction index or net promoter score. Which of these things do you think is most important? Raise your hand if you think A. No one said A. One person said A. B. Okay, 3 people said B. C. Okay, 3 people said C, 4 people D. Okay, I think D was the winner by a hair. All right, you know what? I rank all of these equally. I go for all 4. Here's why. A user's first experience is sometimes called the primacy effect or the halo effect. And that means that their first opinion about a product dictates how they're going to see the rest of the product. Apple gets high scores for this. I've done usability tests on iPhone versus Android for users that didn't use both, and Android usually won. I know everybody thinks, oh, Apple makes it easy to use products. You know what Apple does better? They make better boxes. And so when you take your phone out of your box, you're like, oh, that's so beautiful. And then you turn on the phone and it's got the little image, you're like, oh, it's awesome. This is going to be the best phone ever. And then you know what? Because you formulated that beautiful image in their mind, they're very forgiving in usability problems. iPhone and Android are very close in usability, so don't believe it when people say iPhone's easier. Maybe that was true with Android 1.6, but not anymore. But that Apple's really good at that first experience, that halo effect or that primacy. User's last experience is also very, very important. Now I'm almost out of time, aren't I? Let's say let's say you go to a movie and it's a stinker. It's horrible, right? And somehow you're able to stick it out to the end, right? You just, oh, I should go, but I got popcorn left, so I'll stay for a little bit, right? You know, and then you get to the end, and then the last scene of the movie, like, there's a joke, right? And you're like, oh, that's funny. And then you walk out of the theater, and you got a smile on your face. Okay, that's called the recency effect. People tend to weight their last experience with a product more heavily than any other experience. So therefore, movies always want the last experience to be really good. Adam Sandler's awesome at this. He always has a heartwarming scene at the end. So this is the recency effect. Make sure their last experience with the app is good, and that way they'll remember you favorably. They might recommend your product. Success rate, okay, if they fail, obviously they fail, and that's not good. And then the conversion rate, you know, also very important because, you know, that usually means money, and that's why you made the product in the first place. So you can't let those off. But if you don't get all 4 of those things pretty good, you're in trouble. So get them all good, okay? And you know how to do that? by user testing. Show it to users before it's done, and that way you can make it better and better. All right, that's the end. My name is Matt Nuzum. Here's a couple references. The book that got me started in usability was called Don't Make Me Think by Krug. I can't remember his first name at the moment. Steve Krug, right? Awesome book. He's got one chapter on usability testing, but the rest of the book is still very good. He just released a new edition this year, so go get that book. Or Measuring Usability is a great website if you're a math geek. Niels and Norman Group makes a web newsletter called Use It, and they also do usability week conferences. And then there's a local UXPA of Iowa chapter. You should check them out. Or that's my contact information. I love to talk, and I love to talk about stuff like this. So you can ask me questions. You can email me or call me even, and I'd be happy to help you out. Okay? Thanks a lot for listening.